Good morning, church. I hope everyone is doing well and staying healthy. Before we get started this morning, we've got a few announcements here. We've got Pi Day this Saturday, March the 16th. We have a Friday night sing at Norval Park, Church of Christ. That's at 7 p.m. on April the 5th. And 7th Street is also hosting our quarterly potluck at the Reeker Building. That's going to be April the 7th. Services will follow the potluck at 2 p.m. and we hope to see you there. We hope you will join us. This morning we're continuing our study in the book of Ecclesiastes, and we're talking about the first key theme of the book of Ecclesiastes. Last week we talked about the introduction to the book, and we talked about these different themes and things that we're going to be looking at. And the first one we're going to be examining is the tragic reality of the fall. And really, this tragic reality that we're dealing with, as if you look through just even the first chapter of Ecclesiastes, you can see it's a rather bleak outlook on life. And this continues into chapter 2, and then in chapter 3 we get kind of a nice little poem, and then chapter 4, and continuing on, the other half of chapter 3 and chapter 4, we get more vanities, and a lot of different other things. But as you're reading through the book of Ecclesiastes, you can kind of get the sense that life is not great. But if we take a look in Romans chapter 8, we see this word futility. And this word is actually very similar to the word used in Hebrew that gets translated as vanity. This same word that gets repeated over and over again throughout the book of Ecclesiastes. And this word futility is really what it means, and the Hebrew word along with it means things like vapor, futility, folly, emptiness, vanity, things that really aren't going to last. So we get the sense that the things that we're talking about are things that will not last, which is rather interesting when we start looking at some of the other vanities that the preacher brings up in the book of Ecclesiastes. And when we look in the book of Romans, if we go to Romans chapter 8 here, we find this futility in verse 18, where Paul is talking about the future glory, the future return of Christ. And this is a rather interesting study for us because it helps us understand why the preacher is writing about such futility, such vanity, and why the world is so disappointing in a sense. So if we go ahead and read here in verse 18 and we go down to 25, it reads like this. For I consider that the suffering of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself would be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now. And not only the creation, but we ourselves, who have been the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies. For in this hope we were saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope. For who hopes for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. So we get a lot of we recognize the sufferings that we're dealing with today, but we also understand that the glories that are coming, the glory of what is to be revealed to us, is far greater than what we're dealing with right now. And Paul is writing this to the church in Rome, this future glory that we're looking forward to. This is really interesting. In that first verse that we read there, he says, "For I consider the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is revealed, that is to be revealed to us." So what Paul is saying is that these sufferings that we've been dealing with, these trials and difficulties and hardships that we've been enduring and trying to work through, compared to what is coming, they're not even worth comparing to it. And that really gives a lot of weight to how great this future glory is going to be, how perfect it's going to be, because as much as we're suffering now, as much as we're dealing with these vanities and the futility of all of this, it can't even compare to what is coming. It can't compare to the joy that is coming. And I think that's so amazing, because it gives us that hope to look forward beyond the sufferings that we're dealing with and look forward to that future glory. And if we continue on there in verse 20, all of creation is eagerly awaiting and longing for the revealing of the sons of God. Paul explains in this verse, there in verse 20 and 21, creation was subjected to futility. Now, this futility that Paul mentions is actually that same word we see in Ecclesiastes, just like we talked about a little bit ago. The Greek word is mateitos, and again, that word means vanity, vapor, futility, the emptiness and pointlessness of it. So Paul points out to us that all of creation was subjected to this futility and vanity, that creation itself was a slave to this corruption, but we have been set free from the bondage of corruption and obtained the freedom of the glory in the children of God, and we have obtained this from Christ. It's not something that we've earned, but something that was granted to us through Christ's blood on the cross. All of creation has been groaning together, eagerly awaiting the glory of Christ. And we need to understand that it's through Jesus that we have been redeemed, and it's not anything that we have earned ourselves or anything that we've done well enough or good enough to earn it. It's something that has been gifted to us. It really gives us a very hopeful view of the future, because we recognize how broken this world is. We really begin to see how far we truly have fallen, how tragic everything is. The preacher, or the speaker in Ecclesiastes, he's speaking of life as vanity. It's vapor, it's seemingly pointless and directionless. But Paul speaks of the coming glory of God that we look forward to. We know that Christ will return, and Paul starts in verse 23 explaining that not only all of creation, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, we have already received the gift of the Spirit, having been adopted in the more legal sense. But we still await the full adoption, having our resurrected bodies raised from the dead in Christ. And if we read there, starting there in verse 23, it says, "And not only the creation, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we eagerly await for adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies, for in this hope we were saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope, for who hopes for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience." And I really love that description of hope. A lot of times I think we change the meaning of hope, or we use it more as an I wish instead of I know and I'm waiting. When we say the word I hope, or use the phrase I hope, typically we say, well, I hope my baseball team gets to the gets to the finals. I hope this team gets to the does well enough. I hope things go my way. It's not a guarantee of what we're hoping for. It's an I wish this will happen. But when we talk about hope in the sense of Christ, what we're talking about is I know that Christ will return. I know this coming glory will happen soon, and I'm going to patiently wait for it, even though I don't have all of the physical proof to say that it's going to be here soon. I am still going to wait patiently for it. Just as Paul is explaining, hope that is not seen, who hopes for what they see? Because it's right there in front of them. They don't have to hope, it's there in front of them. So when we're talking about hope, especially hope in Christ, we're talking about, I know that Christ is coming and I will patiently wait for him. And we really get to see that although the fall and sin has corrupted creation, we look forward to the redemption and the resurrection. We look forward to Christ redeeming us, and we look forward to Christ returning. We've already been redeemed by his blood. We've already been adopted in the legal sense. We have been adopted as children of God, and now we're waiting to come home. We look forward to that full adoption in Christ and receiving the resurrected bodies. That home with Christ in heaven is what we're looking forward to. The focus is on how far we've fallen from God. There in the book of Ecclesiastes, there when we're looking at the vanity of vanities and the list of vanities that comes afterwards, we're really beginning to see that we've fallen really far. And I think at times we can forget or maybe ignore how far sin has removed us from God and how much we really did need Jesus to go to the cross and how much he loved us by choosing to go to the cross for us. We also then appreciate the grace and the forgiveness that we receive in Christ's shed blood on the cross, and we receive it, we appreciate it all the more because we then get to understand how much we truly needed it. I hope this helps us understand a little bit more about the tragic reality of the fall, how much sin has really done and how far we've really fallen from God, but also how great God's love and mercy actually is in response to our fallen nature. I hope this helps us look forward to the wonderful return of Christ all the more. And I hope this helps us to study a little bit deeper on what it means to be a follower of Christ and to be a disciple. Be sure to join us next week as we take a closer look at the vanity of life. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and God bless.